Okay, if everyone could please take your seats, we're going to start up. Thank you. Whenever, if you can give them to us now, that would be great. That way I can manage my time. So I'm going to stand up here because I'm short, and if I'm down here, it doesn't work. So welcome everybody. My name is Gita Kapai. I'm the Director of the Office of Public Participation for the State and Regional Water Boards. I'm going to facilitate the dialogue today. My job is to make sure we hear what everyone has to say, that we make sure everyone has a voice, that we provide you with some basic information. There's a staff presentation. There are representatives from the State Water Board. There are representatives from Fish and Wildlife. And then there are a number of you that have representatives here. In managing the cards, so the speaker cards, I have a number of you that have indicated you want to donate your time to some representatives from AMRA. AMRA. And so I have spoken to Shannon and to Craig as well. So they will be representing you and will take that time. When it comes to the comment period, I will allow them to go first and they will speak for you. And then I have a number of you that have indicated you're either with another organization or representing yourself. So I will allow that time afterwards. We have about 2 hours for comments. I want to make sure everyone is heard. At this point in time, I'm not going to limit the other speakers, but if it appears that not everyone will have a voice, then I may indicate 3 minutes or whatever time remaining, depending on the number of cards I have left. So I've introduced myself. I want to introduce a few other folks here. To my right, Russell Norman. He is the project manager for this project for the water boards. He is a water resources control engineer in our division of water quality. With me, I have Phil Wiles. He is our assistant chief counsel for the water boards. The back of the room, I have Diana Messina. She's a supervising engineer with our division of water quality. She's waving. I have Phil Iserina right here. Phil is also a senior engineer with our division of water quality. And Esther Tracy will be taking notes for me. She's out of my office, Office of Public Participation. And we have some folks from Fish and Wildlife as well, and we will introduce them as they come up to the podium. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Russell. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Russell Norman. I'm going to be heading up the effort for the water boards on the suction dredge mining permit. So I'll try to burn through my slides presentation here pretty quick so we can get on collecting your input, which is the main reason we're here. So just as an overview. Oh, hi. Is that better? Yeah. Raise a hand if you can't hear me. As an overview, I'm just going to go over kind of our structure, the state and regional water boards, and what we can expect, in terms of mechanics of this process, and then get into kind of a little background on why we're here, historic and proposed regulatory frameworks for suction dredge mining, and then talk briefly about some potential actions the state water boards may take with respect to this activity, and then just kind of run through basically our understanding of the state of the knowledge on the issues associated with suction dredge mining. Most of that's come out of EIR, which is the most extensive body of research or compilation, I should say, of the water quality effects and impacts. And then briefly go over, kind of a couple of questions that we've seen come in that really are beyond our scope. We just can't address certain things. And then, again, touch on what we know about the water quality effects of suction dredge mining and where the information gaps are. And then lastly, have a wrap up with our contact information. So the water boards consist of a state water board. We're out of Sacramento. We handle kind of statewide policies, permits. That would be statewide general permits. Generally speaking, for any activity, a statewide general permit is the cheapest, most efficient for the district. We have 9 regional boards spread throughout the state. They handle regional policies and permits. They generally deal in individual permits, so if a miner comes in, they get their own permit, it's going to cost more, takes more time, and so forth. Our authority comes from state law, which is the Port of Cologne Water Quality Act, and we are also a MPDS delegated state by EPA, so we have regulatory authority under the Federal Clean Water Act. And before I move on, this, in response to this series of workshops we're doing, we will compile and summarize all the comments we received from the public, and we'll post that document on our website, probably following the February meeting in Sacramento. And then as we move through the process, depending on what the board decides to do, our board, the State Water Board, we may have several other opportunities for public comment moving through this process. So I expect at least 2, maybe 3, because we will, after doing these workshops, if our board management decide for us to do something, we'll create a draft and we'll put that on the street for public comment. We'll collect those comments, we'll respond to those comments. And then we anticipate having a board workshop where, again, people can either submit written comments or come in person and comment. And again, we'll compile those comments, summarize them, and respond to them. And then lastly, we would anticipate an adoption hearing for any action. And again, folks can show up and provide public comment as well as written comment, I believe, for that adoption hearing. So there will be multiple opportunities to interject, your information and concerns into this process. And just to describe our board, the state water board and the regional water boards have board members from the general public. They represent farmers, engineers, other folks from the array of the citizenship of the state. And they're appointed by the governor, and they are the folks who make final decisions. So just want to emphasize that, as we move through this process, the real decision makers are going to be those board members at the board meetings. So those are the most important ears to reach to get the message out. Okay, moving on through our presentation, why we're here. Senate Bill 637 was passed last year, became effective beginning of, actually it was passed in 2015, became effective January 1st, 2016. It authorized Department of Fish and Wildlife to issue permits for suction dredge mining, but it conditioned that on potential permittee getting a permit from the water boards first, or a letter stating that a permit was needed. Furthermore, the Senate Bill 637 directed the water boards to hold these public workshops and collect the input of the public as to how suction dredge mining should be regulated, and we were directed to conduct these meetings in Fresno, Reagan, Sacramento, and San Bernardino. So this is the kickoff for that effort. Tomorrow we're doing San Bernardino. Next week we're in Reading, and we did add a meeting that didn't get on the slide in Orleans for the carrier truck. So next week is Orleans and Reading, and then in early February we're having a meeting in Sacramento. And then following that the Sacramento meeting, we'll do the summary of comments. It'll be some months before we would have a workshop if our board decides they want to pursue a permit. Okay? And then we'll public notice all those actions. Senate Bill 637 authorized the water boards to consider issuing individual permits, a statewide general permit, or prohibition. In addition, as we just covered, do nothing, do not issue a permit. In terms of the historic regulatory framework, all you miners know this. Back in the good old days, you just go to the DFW and you get a permit. You go do your thing, right? And then during that brief period, 95 to 2000, Army Corps had their general permit. You had to kind of rubber stamp, pay your fee, right? this is the only place State Water Board has ever interjected itself in this process. We issued a blanket water quality certification on that original permit.
Closer to the mic.
Okay. Pardon me? Maybe I should make this. Yeah. So during that period from 95 to 2000, Army Corps of Engineers did issue a general permit. And this is the only place that the State Water Board has ever been involved in suction dredge mining, is we issued a blanket water quality certification on that Army Corps general permit. That thing was not revised in 2000, had a 5-year life. Army Corps got out of the business of issuing those 404 permits for this activity. The feds are generally of the position that's a NPDES activity, not a dredge field. So, and then, as you know, 2000, 2009, again, you were back to just get a DFW permit, good to go. And then from 2009 to present, as you know, there's been a moratorium on dredging. Moving forward, State Water Board has several options, and we're taking the lead on this versus, punting it off to the regional boards and making everybody go for an individual permit. Again, that's very time-consuming, costly process. So we're taking lead with the anticipation that if we do anything, we'll do a statewide general permit, make it easy, lowest cost, shortest turnaround time for potential permittees. So SB 637 again, authorized us to do a permit prohibition or other no action or other action. And then, so moving forward, you'll have to come to us first, get whatever we're providing for section dredge mining in terms of authorization, and then you'll go to the Department of Fish and Wildlife and get your DFW permit. So they would not deem your permit complete until you either have a permit from the water boards or a letter stating you don't need one from the water boards. So as we move through the process, our objectives are to ensure compliance with water quality standards and to minimize and mitigate water quality impact from suction dredge mining activities. So some potential actions we could take. Again, we've touched on individual permits issued by regional water boards. Again, that would be specific requirements for each activity or for each operation. More tailored to the local environment, really. And then, or a statewide general permit issued by a state water board. And that would be a blanket set of requirements that would apply to everybody in the whole state. And then prohibitions or a combination of the above. So, in other words, we may prohibit the activity in some waters, provide a general permit in others. Certain operations that don't fit in the framework of a general permit, we might choose to permit individually. So our prohibition options, not to, that word's kind of alarming, right? We're never going to deal with that. So that's not what we're thinking. But prohibitions in certain waters may be on the table. That would include water bodies impaired for turbidity, mercury, other trace metals, including waters with elevated fish tissue, mercury levels. And, or might include a prohibition on dredging a certain distance upstream of that impaired water body section. Those are all mapped out on the Water Board's website. Unfortunately, a lot of those areas are in the historic mining areas where dredging is popular. We might also entertain a prohibition on dredging a certain distance upstream of drinking water treatment plant intakes, just to protect that source water for drinking water supply. Prohibition on dredging a specified distance upstream of Native American tribal land to address tribal concerns and beneficial uses. a prohibition on the use of certain suction dredge mining equipment. What that equipment is, you know, we're open to suggestions. We are not the experts at this, so just, again, something that SB 637 directed that we can look at, and then other prohibition options. So if, in terms of what would go in a permit, if we choose to issue a permit, would be most likely look something like the Oregon or Idaho, Oregon or Washington or Idaho general permits for this activity. So it would be B&P driven. And then, you know, an option would also be to make a monitoring driven, require water quality monitoring. Although on the individual level, that's very cost prohibitive and very technically involved to get good data. So it's on the table, not very practical in this case, probably, in the sense of the water boards may support or sponsor or encourage water quality studies on a bigger scale, you know. Wouldn't be tied to any particular permit or compliance per se, but with the aim of gathering more data on the impacts. And then any permit would definitely require some level of reporting and record keeping. So a number of items, you know, of relevance for water quality have already been addressed in DFW regulations. And those regs are going to be updated, as DFW staff will point out here when I'm done. But just a few of the things, you know, that they've built into their regs is restriction on nozzle size, spacing between dredges, the number of permits issued is capped at 1,500 per year, about half of the historic average, I think. And then they've also built in some spill prevention, BMPs, or best management practices. So secondary containment on fluids, fuel storage, fueling and servicing equipment, BMPs. Additionally, DFW regulations have specified certain controls that will help control turbidity and minimize sediment transport. That includes a restriction on dredging and silt and clay materials, no import of material, and then the restrictions on dredging within the stream banks. Flow deflection that could cause erosion and dam construction are also restricted in the regs. And then the no suction dredging in lakes and reservoirs. So as well, there's some aquatic habitat best management practices that have been built into the DFW regs, including addressing disturbances to mussel beds, fish redds, spawning fish, amphibian eggs or tadpoles, and that includes requirements of screen intake nozzles on pumps, and provisions addressing the entrainment of fish and molluscan amphibians, and then provisions to spread or prevent the spread of invasive species by requiring cleaning and decontamination of equipment, and provisions to address the fish passage obstruction. And lastly, timing of activities, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. So, those items I just listed, obviously we're not going to touch. They may get revised as DFW updates their regs to the current standards. That would be their 2012 version. I imagine there's going to be opportunity for you all to influence that process as well as that kicks off. So definitely keep an eye out for that. So a couple items, really not our scope. So what we just went over, you know, it's part of Fish and Wildlife Suction Drift Mining Regulations and Senate Bill 637. 7. We are not in a position to change any of those things. So, and then fisheries impact. So the DFW has come up with a set of regulations that have been deemed, to not impact fish, right? They have to update that to apply to all aquatic life. So that's the reg update that's going to happen, or part of it. So, we're really not going to address those findings in our activities. Anything to do with mining rights, we're not the people that decide where you can mine and so forth. So anything related to mining rights is out of our purview. The definition of suction dredge mining is also in California regulation, so we're not in a position to change that either. That again would be a DFWD item. And then case law and ongoing litigation related to suction dredge mining. So again, those activities that are ongoing right now, they may shape the future of what the regulatory world looks like for suction dredge mining. What do we know about water quality effects? So we have not dug into a serious literature review yet. We went straight to the ERR, which is the best compilation at this point of the effects and impacts of suction dredge mining. So just run through the findings in the EIR. Less than significant effects were found to be impacts associated with turbidity and total spent sediment, and impacts associated with discharge of trace organic compounds. Significant and unavoidable effects include mercury resuspension and discharge, and other trace metal resuspension and discharge. Less than significant cumulative effects. Again, this is cumulative, so other trace metal resuspension and discharge. And then the significant and unavoidable cumulative effects include cumulative effects to turbidity and total spent sediment discharges, and cumulative impacts of mercury resuspension and discharge. So digging more into the IR, the DFW did a pretty extensive literature review, and to summarize those findings, which jives pretty well with the research papers that we have reviewed to date that address the active monitoring of operational dredge. So they've effects of turbidity and TSS concentrations are limited to the area immediately downstream of the dredging during the time of dredging. A few numbers have been thrown out. Generally, the dredge spacing that DFW set up of 500 feet is about the recovery, generally speaking, that we've seen in the literature within 300 to 500 feet. The other finding from DFW's literature review is that, and a couple other studies have confirmed this, that the fine particles of sediment have at least an order of magnitude higher mercury concentrations than the finer or larger fractions. So something we kind of know that the mercury tends to grab onto the small sediments and can be discharged from a dredge back in. Other study findings. Water boards did a study in 2005 on the American River and Mercury hotspot, where they actually were vacuuming up pooled mercury, if I recall correctly. It was found that 98% of mercury present was captured by the dredge. Just to note, as the miners probably know, they were using crash box header and I think carpet for miner's moss. Rick?
What?
Carpet for miner's moss? Is that what you're using on your dredge?
You mean on the Forest Service's mineral examination dredge?
Yeah, the crash box header and...
It was a dredge.
Okay, anyways, So it wasn't the most modern dredge.
That was the team that does mineral evaluations for, you know, whether a claim's gonna get patented or not.
Right. So at any rate, you know, the water board's study has shown capture of mercury by dredge. We're not aware, I have not seen any studies that show that the water column metal concentrations downstream of an operating dredge violate water quality standards. However, we have seen study results. Rick's study, the water board study in 2005, did show that the fine sediment coming out of the back end of the dredge is very hot for mercury. So concentrations that are that exceed RECRA standards per Rick's study. Again, you know, the few studies we've looked at that were from Alaska and Oregon that looked at active water quality monitoring behind the operating dredge indicate short-term localized impacts, right? Including on turbidity and metal concentrations. Some of those studies, like the Fleck report, you know, conclude there's potential for fine sediment to be discharged out the backstream of the dredge that's high in mercury, and that fine sediment can be transported long distances downstream. So, talk about information gaps for a second. The relative magnitude of mercury discharges from dredges compared to other sources is really not known. When you look at the planning documents for the statewide mercury program, mercury reservoirs, they generally put a load allocation, right, for all the sources like wastewater treatment plants, atmospheric deposition, the dredge and fill activities, not associated with suction dredge mining, but other dredge and fill activities. And they can put numbers to all those, but suction dredge mining is off the radar for all that planning, or it's lumped in with the general dredge fill activity. Additionally, information gap is what is the fate and transport of mercury discharged by suction dredges? What's the effect of disturbing that mercury on speciation and reactivity of the mercury? So when you pull it up from the depths of the stream bed and pass it through a dredge, whatever escapes, right, that 2%, according to water board study, that escapes, what happens to it? Does the act of dredging change it? Does it flower? What does it do? So we don't know that. And that second bullet point, you know, extent to which mercury flowers as a result of passing through dredge. Probably depending a lot on dredge design. With a crash box header dredge, you're probably going to be a lot more turbulence, potential flowering. The more modern, I forget what you call them, but they're fluted intake, less turbulence, probably less flowering. Again, additional information gap. So we really don't know the extent to which mercury discharge from dredges is transported to environments favorable to formation of methyl mercury. We do know from our mercury reservoirs program at the State Water Board that their conclusions at this point is that the mercury methylation is more a function of how they operate that reservoir than it is source control or load. I mean, back up, if we didn't have the mercury, we wouldn't have the problem, obviously, so it is an issue of load. But as that mercury is transported into the reservoir, how it methylates is mostly a function of how they operate that dredge. It's also a function of primary production. So, again, it's a big information gap. We don't know a whole lot. The magnitude, transport, and fate of other trace metals is also unknown. Just hasn't been studied. A number of studies on suction dredge mining in the literature is limited to basically a handful that have good, meaningful data. And again, another information gap is the effect of equipment. You know, how is a crash box header different from a conventional dredge, or the current design. What do you call it?
A modern dredge.
Modern dredge. A flared intake, right? And then again, location of mercury hotspots. We know they're out there, but again, from our Mercury and Reservoirs program at State Water Board, we have a lot of mercury in reservoirs with no historic mining activity. So it's, you can't draw a direct correlation. So there are mercury hotspots out there that again, we know where some of them are because of large historic mines, but there are other hotspots out there that are impacting reservoirs and other waters that we just don't know where they're at. And to wrap up here, this is my contact information, and I'll put this presentation on our website. I have provided it to AMRA, and our webpage is there. And also the key thing is all of the activities when we public notice the upcoming, anytime we post something to our website or upcoming workshops or whatever, adoption hearings, preparation of draft permit, for instance, we'll send out an email on our Lyris server, and so that bottom listserv sign-up directs you how, if you're new an email and or have internet access, you can sign up for that list, and we'll just send you an automated email when we have a draft hit the street or whatever. So I'm done. So thank you, and I think does DFW have some something? Okay.
Is this okay for hearing me all right? Sometimes I don't need a mic. My name is Linda Connolly. I'm a supervisor with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. I work here in Fresno in our Habitat Conservation and Planning branch. I do a variety of regulatory permitting work. And I've been asked to come and provide some information about the department's role in this in terms of our requirements under 637 and what that means for the future of getting a suction dredge permitting program in place again. So, I originally had seen a slide that showed the different regions. So I was, if you're not familiar, okay. Anyway, we're just as a little background, we're a 12-county region. We extend basically from the southern Sierras, western Mojave, over to the ocean. So we cover 12 counties, like I said, numerous habitats, a number of areas, I'm sure, where there's mining activity that you're interested in. So I'll just kind of move on then to Senate Bill 637 implementation and how that affects Department of Fish and Wildlife. In order to comply with what is in the Senate bill, we're going to have to do an amendment of regulations and that's changing what's in Code Section 5653, which requires compliance under the rulemaking procedures of the Administrative Procedure Act, or APA, and then also environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, which you might be familiar with. In amending regulations, that's going to include some things that we've already heard in terms of incorporating the permit application content and process requirements that are prescribed by 637. And included in that is the requirement that a complete application to the Department of Fish and Wildlife will need to include water quality permitting already to be completed from one of the water boards. We're going to, or the department will need to change a definition of what suction dredging is to be consistent with what is in SB 637 to ensure that the use of suction dredge equipment doesn't cause significant effects to fish and wildlife, which is a difference from how regulation was applied in the past in terms of basically affects only to fish, I believe. And then also to set permit fees to cover the costs to regulate suction dredging. So that would be a permit-related fee that would support costs to
implement the program. As you've probably seen, 637 has updated the definition of suction dredge mining, which is the use of mechanized or motorized system for removing or assisting in the removal of, or the processing of, material from the bed, bank, or channel of a river, stream, or lake in order to recover minerals. And then, in terms of amending regulations, the timing that's required there under the Administrative Procedure Act is that the department will have 1 calendar year from the time of publishing a notice. And if we don't meet that, the department would need to renotice and basically restart the process. It is foreseen at this point that the department would be able to make that notice under APA as soon as June of this year. And what that means then is that the department will be expected to complete that process by June of 2018, and that should coincide with the state board's similar process for its permitting program effort. What we have here on here is the Kathy Bauchilis is the statewide contact for suction dredge mining permits. She is a program manager, like I said, in Sacramento. The site up there, if you haven't been to the department's webpage for suction dredge mining permitting, it includes quite a bit of information on Senate Bill 637, the permitting background, the history, including the legal history in the last few years, in addition to the EIR sections with links for the sections of the EIR. I believe many attachments to that in case you haven't read those. Brenda is pretty well informed. I'll also be available for questions.
Okay, so I've got my panel up here, and there are other folks that may have answers to some of the questions you may have. So a couple of things. We're a little early, but we're going to start in on the questions and comment period. A few ground rules. You may not agree with every speaker. All ideas and opinions have value, so please be respectful. Please honor time. I want to make sure that we hear from everyone. If you want to speak, I can't have folks just yelling things out. We want to make sure everyone is heard. We want to capture the thoughts, so please use a speaker card and a microphone. While there may have been some of you that want to defer your time to a couple of representatives, that's fine. If you decide afterwards that you wish to speak, please fill out another speaker card and give it to me, and we'll make sure you are heard as well. If you have a comment, that's fine. We'll try and capture those. If you have a question and want one of the folks to respond, whether it's on process, procedures, an element of the law, whatever, we'll make sure that we try and respond. If not, we'll get your contact information and try and get back to you. At the end of the process, I want to remind you that written comments will be due at noon on Tuesday, February 28th, so following the 5 public workshops. The Sacramento workshop that's listed on the notice will be webcast, and so even though you may not physically attend, you can also participate and watch that. All the presentations will be posted, so I noticed a few of you taking pictures of the slides. They will be posted, so you'll be able to capture those. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Poe for the first presentation.
Mr. Lindsay.
Oh, Mr. Lindsay first, that's fine. And then for those of you that have indicated that you yourself wish to